Hello, everybody. My name is Matt Brennan. I'm editor-in-chief of The Envelope, the Los Angeles Times Awards magazine. I have here with me two gentlemen who need no introduction, but I'll introduce them anyway, Gideon Glick and Luke Kirby. Thank you so much for being here. So I want to just sort of get the elephant out of the room right away. On Friday, it was reported that the series won't be continuing. I'm wondering how... Well, I was going to ask, how do you find out, and sort of how are you mourning it?
So on Friday it was my 37th birthday, and thank you. And I came to LA because I received an award from the Critics' Choice Association for the show, and I got into my hotel, and then I got a text from Amy about 3 hours before that award show saying, "Hey, I don't want you to be blindsided, but Deadline will be reporting that we have been canceled." So it was a really fun day.
Well, you got an award.
And what did you get?
I didn't get shit. Yet.
Yeah. We're hoping to change that. I wanted to start
Thank you
by...
for coming, by the way, in spite of... Thank you for attending our post-mortem. I'll be handing out my liver at the front door.
And my resume.
That's definitely a new Emmy campaign strategy, organ donation.
Feel bad for my corpse. Sorry.
So I wanted to start actually by just sort of like setting a level on what your exposure to the dance world or interest in it was before you embarked on this project, because I feel like for me, it illuminates so much that I didn't really have any understanding of as even a reasonably cultured person.
Yeah, I grew up doing musical theater, so I had an understanding about plays and musicals and dance from that, and a little bit of modern dance, but ballet was a real blind spot. And then when I joined the writer's room, I had to sort of take a macro view of what ballet was so that I wasn't an idiot, and I could give input in the room. And then when I started playing Tobias, it became a little bit less macro and more specific, shadowing choreographers like Christopher Wheeldon, but also drawing from my own experience. Like, I did a musical called Spring Awakening when I was 17, and I worked with a modern dance legend named Bill T. Jones, and he really inspired me for Tobias. But again, that wasn't ballet. And so ballet is such an insular, disciplined world. And I think that, for me, was the most eye-opening thing. Just because you have to be doing ballet from 9 years old on. You can't... I think an actor can walk onto a stage and actually be brilliant who've never acted before. But you literally cannot do that if you are a ballerina, because your body can't take it. And so I came away with just a deep, deep appreciation for the art and the discipline of it.
What about you, Luke?
My mom danced or talked about it. You know, she has a story about like standing at the door of a Twyla Tharp audition and then leaving. So there was a kind of like, some sort of dream deferred in terms of, what could have been of my mother's life. I have a cousin who's a ballet dancer. I was meant to see her dance at the Nutcracker when we were kids, but I threw up in the car on the way there, and so never got to see it. I have a very affectionate memory of seeing Alvin Ailey's Revelations when I was about 16. So it was just sort of like, I dipped my toe here and there, but was always really enamored with any kind of dance or movement. I went to theater school in Montreal, and they had a really hot dance culture there, and I'd see a lot of dress rehearsals of, Butoh dance and contact improv, and I got around.
So you both have worked with Étoile creators, Amy Sherman Paladino and Dan Paladino, before on Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So I wanted to sort of talk a little bit about, like, what is it for actors that makes them love Amy and Dan's writing?
I liken them to Stephen Sondheim. I think they have done all the work for you. It is all there, and it's so well constructed, and it's psychologically potent that for an actor, it's pretty much a dream, because you really just have to get out of the way and say the lines, and it will be there. I think when writing is that good, it tends to be that way. So that's my answer.
I liken them to Shakespeare. I kind of do, in that they're with Amy and Dan, with their writing, you don't do the text does you, and it really does kind of the more you sort of take that leap of faith with their words and embody them, and then get them out with that sort of undercurrent of that velocity that they demand. Things are revealed in the writing in the moment. There's a lot of emotional nuance that is kind of, so you can really be available to, every time you do a take, it can be different, and it's rooted in the text. There's just there's a lot of pulse in it. And I think they have, Amy and Dan are really neat because they have worked in television their entire careers. I mean, for a really long time. So they've, Dan worked on Who's the Boss, and that's a great show. And they've watched the television just go through this medium go through this incredible story, and they have really curious and interesting taste in film. They love to compose. They want to make something of great scope, and it's just a great charm to get to do that as an actor.
Was there anything about these particular roles that you sort of felt like pushed you further in your experience of working with them, or your understanding of how they work, from Alfie or Lenny on Maisel?
I mean, for me as an artist, being able to come into the writer's room and be a series regular, it was pretty life-changing. I've said this before, but when people you admire so much believe in you start to believe in yourself in a much deeper way. So that artistically has changed my life, and also seeing their process so up close. It's deeply fascinating. I mean, Amy in a room can. I liken it to being like struck by lightning, and she'll just like, the Cheyenne's monologue about the village in episode 3 or
12.
Yeah. Oh. She just in the middle of the room just started spitting it out, almost word for word, and we have very studious assistants in the room who are writing everything down, and then it actually gets right in there, because they're very, very instinctual. And so when something hits, they know it hits. And they're like that with everybody that they work with. If they have a feeling, they will go with it, and they will allow you to honor that feeling. And that makes them like pretty extraordinary collaborators.
So when you mentioned that you were in the writer's room, we recently had Amy and Dan on the Envelope podcast. And so the story that Amy tells is that she's in the writer's room, and you're creating the character of Tobias, and she and Dan keep staring at you. That was the phrase that she used.
They did.
Until literally one day they were like, no, it has to be you. I would be curious to hear the story from your point of view.
I mean, it's pretty accurate. I mean, when they offered me the room, they said, we know you love acting. We'll get you in front of the camera one way or the other. And so I thought that meant a guest star or a recur. And they didn't offer me the part until about a month into it. And every time they talked about Tobias, they would just look at me. And they would gesture to me, and it was driving me crazy. And I would come home and I'd talk to my husband. And I was like, "What is going on?" And because I also felt, I felt connected to the character, and so I thought maybe it's within my grasp, and it felt like it was. And then they finally brought me into their office and offered it to me, and it was an extraordinary day.
When you say it's life-changing, has it changed kind of your understanding of what your ambitions were going in? Like, do you feel like what you want your next step to be is different because you got this opportunity to do both?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's also, it was like going to grad school because I was seeing how the sausage gets made by true auteurs. It's interesting. I did Maestro with Bradley Cooper, and I saw a man who took on everything, and it blew my mind. And it actually did start to open up like the portal to an extent. I'm like, oh, maybe that is possible. I don't think I can do what he can do, but I do think that capacity is much larger than we think. And it really woke up my writer brain. I mean, I liken writing for them as playing a part to an extent, because their voice is not necessarily my voice, but I pretended to be them. So when I would write for them, because I understood that they have a very specific voice. And that was really helpful. It helped me expand what I was capable of doing. And now writing is a really, really big part of my life. And, I have projects down the line that are just writing oriented. They're not acting.
That's great. I love that story.
I'm working on spelling. And I promise by next year.
I was actually going to ask if you at any point try, yes. If you at any point tried any of the dance moves, like did you ever, like.
Yes. Yeah, I took ballet classes. I wanted to have a sense of a couple of things. I figured this is a person who looks at bodies as commodity and has a trained eye to see, what the line is, what what the talent is, and I just wanted a sense of what that language is that people would have in these situations. So I thought the best way to do it would be to put on a pair of tights and get into a room, and.
You didn't wear tights. You wore gym shorts.
How dare you?
You wore gym shorts.
How fucking dare you? He is a liar. I can spell, first of all. No, it was revelatory. The demands of this art form that we were sort of exploring. It gave me a great appreciation for the dancers that we had. They just worked so tirelessly. They had to do dances that they never would have to do that many times in a day professionally, and they would do them with great alacrity over and over and over again. Their dedication and discipline was really inspiring. I kind of would look at them every day and think, oh, geez, I really got to get my act together, because they are on top of it. Yeah.
I was going to ask if there was anything, they say that an actor's body is their instrument. Being surrounded by people who have such immaculate control of the movement of their bodies day in and day out, with these real life dancers that Amy and Dan sort of built into companies in New York and Paris. What do you feel like as actors you learned from being in close proximity to dancers of that caliber for that amount of time?
How much I hated my body. No, I mean, it's a different intelligence is what it is. I mean, being an actor is a body intelligence, but being a dancer it's another form. It's a more exquisite form.
Well, they don't get to make sounds.
They don't get to make sounds.
They are hindered in that way. No, I mean, truly, like we get to sort of be limbered up a bit. I mean, ballet is specific and demands a sort of a hyperextension of the extremities that we're not always asked to do, and sometimes told that's a little big. Pull back.
But also, I think like as an actor, you're really championed to explore your instincts. But ballet is different. Ballet is really about discipline, and it's about being within the confines of what has been put on you. But obviously, dancers are artists, and there is an instinct in the way they can express inside of it. But it's a much more constrained art form, and it's really deeply impressive.
I was struck by just how. the thing that we all had in common is just how playful we all were. They are just as excited to be in the presence of each other and be in a room with bodies as we are. You know, it's a silly gang.
Goofy.
Yeah, a goofy troupe.
It really does come across as sort of like a real life company that they've created, and it has that texture to the relationships, even among relatively minor characters. So, and I think that is sort of what you're alluding to.
Yeah, that's great.
So, Gideon, you got to shoot quite a bit in Paris. Luke, I think you got to do a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
Amy raved about it. So I'd be curious, like, what was the experience of shooting there? Had you done anything at length in Paris before, and like, how did it compare to your experiences working in North America?
Oh, it was just great to be in Paris. I mean, just, you know, what an exciting city to contrast with New York. It was really, I think the biggest thing, then most sort of fascinating thing was, you know, they work in a different fashion in terms of the clock, but you know, their affection for the work and for the craft is just as committed and determined. It felt really lucky to be with those actors. You know, Charlotte obviously is a legend and an angel, and Lou is a very, very exciting, hot talent, and Marie Berto is, I think, kind of a true genius in her work. And just getting to work with people that, just by virtue of an ocean and language, is just a rare gift. So, oh yeah, that was nice. I can't wait to go back. Sorry.
You know, I've never
As long
I'm
as,
so sorry, Luke.
as long as Prime Video blames you and not me.
I've never lived. I come from Philadelphia. I moved to New York when I was 17, and I've never lived anywhere else because I had a career in the theater, and that was all in New York. So I was really excited about the idea of living in one of the greatest cities in the world. But I will say I'm pretty hearing impaired. I can't hear in my right ear. I'm losing hearing in my left, and I found the accents to be so hard. French accents are. They swallow it. It's a mumble language, and so I found that to be really, really challenging. But strangely, I don't consider myself method in any way, shape, or form. But I did feel a little isolated, and I felt it really helped me stay in Tobias's mind. So I'm sort of grateful for that, and I'm grateful to have the experience to have lived in truly one of the most beautiful cities in the world for half a year.
So the episode that we screened concludes with like the quintessential Amy and Dan romantic fulfillment moment, not just for one of you, but for both of you. So I was hoping that you could each kind of take us back to the day of shooting those kisses, and like, what's your kind of like most vivid memory of those days? Because it just like really connects.
You know, for me, that was the most magical day of shooting, because it was, I got to do that monologue, and that monologue was, it was an interesting experience, because here I am, I'm standing on stage, I'm all of a sudden like live streaming what's going on inside Tobias's mind, which you've never experienced before, and all of a sudden the camera's kind of coming around me, and I quickly realized, oh my God, we're doing this in a oneer. We're not breaking this up, and so I tried to assuage my anxiety in a strange way, because I come from the theater, I've stood on stage, I have delivered monologues, and weirdly I was like, okay, this is the end of my experience in Paris, and I'm playing a character who's reflecting on his experience in Paris. I'm saying some lines that I've written myself about my experience in Paris. And I have Amy Sherman Paladino right behind the camera right there. And I feel really close and connected to her. And I because of this experience and being in the room with her and just loving her so much, that it really moved me. And I'd never had that experience before, where I felt like my life and Tobias's life sort of fell into each other. So that was really, really special. And then it ended, and then they did that dance. And it's the coolest dance I've ever seen. And it was one of those, oh my God, I can't believe this is my job, that I get to watch this. And everybody collectively felt like, oh, this is a remarkable day, because to do these dances, as Luke said, there's only so many times that you can do it, because their bodies will give out. And so always shooting a dance was the most electric part of any day. And that dance was really complex. They're going on and off these bars, and then we got it. And then I got to run up to Yvon Dupont-de-Vis and kiss him. And so it just was a beautiful accumulation of the entire experience. And so it was just deeply, deeply satisfying.
Your scene, Luke, is obviously like much more sort of cloistered. It's just you and Lou. Take us through kind of how the two of you sort of prepped for that moment and what it was like on the day.
I remember us kind of being... Lou was a little bit confounded because it was written into the script that she starts crying, and I think it felt abrupt, kind of not sort of in keeping with a lot of what Amy and Dan do. And we sort of just sat together and reflected on the first scene that we have in the show, which kind of is two people talking about, the world post-pandemic, this cinema that's shut down, and that they served smoked salmon sandwiches and were cruel to the old people. But sort of in that scene at the very beginning of the show, you see a lot of something about their story, and it was the essence of that being born again inside of that scene. And we kind of came to some sort of secret conclusion about their history, and just kind of went for broke. It was our last day on set, so I think everyone was just eager to get to the food trucks. But it was, Lou is exceptional, and I was staggered by her, always staggered by her talent, but I was a bit like, oh, how's she going to pull this one off? And she just knocked my socks off. Lucky to get to be in the room with someone like that, I think also maybe Jim McConkey had to put on like a green suit to hide the mirror. So that's always makes for it. Kermit the giant frog holding a Steadicam. Ooh, kiss me. Don't stop, So, but no, it's just another rich day at work.
Speaking of that kind of arc from the beginning to the end, I'm curious for your takes on what you think Jack and Tobias learn from the swap as characters. Like, what does it give to them that they did not have at the outset of this story?
I mean, Tobias, I think, has a really beautiful, clean, clear arc. Tobias starts off not being able to really communicate with other people and not feel understood, and not, he says in, I think it's episode 4, when Gabon is upset, and he goes, your message is clear, and he goes, my message is never clear. And he realizes through Gabon, and Gabon realizes through Tobias, that their defenses come down, and finally it's first through their art, but then they're able to actually connect. And it's somebody who's never been really able to connect with somebody. I mean, he thought he was still dating somebody a year after they broke up. So he so lives in his own world, and it sort of goes back to what I was saying about how magical that day was, because all of a sudden this character is, it's his final scene, and he has this epiphany about his experience of working on art and understanding. The thing is, I think the audience knows that Tobias is falling in love with Gabon way before Tobias does, and then finally he catches up with them, and it's just so special. And then obviously it accumulates in the consummation of their love and their art. So it was a beautiful moment, and it's a beautiful arc.
I think that's why both endings are so satisfying, is because one, you are yearning for them to get together most of the time, and then in the case of Jack and Cheyenne, it's a sort of a, I don't want to use the word traditional, not in a bad way, but because they clash, it has that feeling of an old school romantic comedy where a kind of like they have tension that they need to kind of resolve.
It's also stirring the pot, and I think with what's beautiful with Tobias and Gabon is that there's just an incredible strength coming out of these two people that's really like, it asserts that what they give up for their art is of value, because it strengthens them and heightens them as people and keeps them growing as people. I think Jack's situation, Jack's really stepped in shit. And I think he's in, but I do think that I think Jack knows that's partly his lot in life. He's surrounded by rich talents, and as envious of them as he may be, like his sister, or he has deep affection for them, and wants for them to have happy lives. And I it's not that he throws himself on the anthill, but I do think that his responsibility is one that does kind of invite, not a satisfying an end. I mean, there's nothing wrong with getting a kiss, I guess. Jack really wins, actually, now that I think about it. Jack's a stud. Cool guy. But no, I think that Jack's kind of, in trouble a little bit. But I'm sure that he would be happy to hear about Genevieve's, what happened there, when he learns that and the news of that great outcome. That's an incredible story that will make the whole thing have felt worthy and valuable.
I actually wanted to ask you both about what Genevieve says in that moment where she compares art or sort of defines art as a form of insanity. Does that accord with your own sort of experience of the creative process? Like, how would you describe how the creative process to you feels when you're inside of it?
I think it's a shame if you've never been insane. I think that you're lucky to get to hit that kind of atomized experience. So maybe maybe it's true. But it's a great gift to know you have that option. But I also think art is really enriching. Clearly, I mean, it brings us into rooms with people. It gives us life. It gives us reflection. It can slow time down. It's a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the creative process takes many different. It shows up in many different ways. Sometimes it's manic. I mean, sometimes if I'm on a writing spree, it pours out of me, and everything else disappears. And one could say that that's kind of crazy, because I'm not doing my tasks. I'm not paying attention to my husband or my dog. Mostly, I am paying attention to my dog. I'm not paying attention to my husband, actually. But there's the Greek word for ecstasy, ecstasis. It means to leave the body, and I think as an artist, that's as an actor, that's something I always want to feel. Where I'm not thinking anymore. I'm in the scene, and I think all forms of creation are actually quite like that. In the same way that I just said, Amy gets hit by lightning, and all of a sudden she's spewing out this incredible monologue. Where did that come from? She's leaving her body, and it's crazy.
Before I let you go, I did actually want to go back to Tobias's monologue. What moved me about it is that moment where you can almost see him realizing in real time that it was worth it to have gone. And he talks about being scared and sort of learning to fail and then try again, and how the experience changed him. You sort of alluded to it earlier, Gideon, but for both of you, how would you say the experience of making Étoile changed you?
I mean, I don't want to get emotional because but it's it was one of the greatest artistic experiences of my life. Getting to do what I was able to do was extraordinary, but getting to do it with these people, it's not every day where there is no rotten apple. And we had 2 dance companies in 2 different cities, and we had an American crew and a French crew, and a gigantic cast, and everybody was extraordinary. Everybody was extraordinary, and we shot for 8 months, and we moved from Paris to New York and back to Paris, and everybody was happy to be there because we really believed in what we were doing, and we still believe in what we did, and that is just such a rare feat, and it was the greatest gift, and I think everybody working on that show would agree.
Yeah, I think it asserted the whisper that we all have within us, and to listen to the whisper, don't shut it down.
Well, thank you so much to you both. Congratulations. It's really
Thank you.
An excellent piece of work.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a good night.